welcome more of a panel kind of a feel instead of just one person presenting. So I'll get to that in just a second. But before I do, just a reminder to please silence your phone. If you there is T-coil in here, so if you're interested in using that, please hook up however you need to at this time. And then if you can at the end stay and help us put away chairs, that would be lovely. Today, also, just to let you know, we're going to go just a little bit longer than we have in past weeks since we have some more things to talk about. So we'll take a break at about 11:40, and then we'll come back and take a little break, and then we'll end, what did I say, 11? Sorry, 10. Thank you, 10:40. That's an important detail. Hello, no one, I saw that you guys do a little head, and I was like, what did I say? Talk all day. Let's take a break at 10:40, and then we'll finish around 11:30-ish, okay? I think I have those times right now. I'm going to go get coffee right after this so I can wake up a little bit more. So today, very, very excited to introduce here and welcome individuals from the Grinnell College Prison Program. Excited to learn more about that program. I get a lot of feedback, just FYI, about they see the house name and wondering what the program is all about. And so I thought this would be a really good opportunity for us to talk about that program. So will you please help me welcome individuals from the Grinnell College's Prison Program.
Hi, everybody. Is my microphone working? Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So welcome. It's glad to have you here. Glad to be here. We are going to have what I hope is a lively, mostly Q&A session about the liberal arts in prison program. We're going to set this up with some introduction, some basic information about the program, and then we have a couple of alumni from the program here visiting, and also a professor who's teaching this semester, and another one will be coming a bit later. So we have lots of folks here to talk about the program and what it's like. So it should be great. So my name is Emily Guenther. I moved to Grinnell in 2003 to go to college, and then I just couldn't bear to leave and have stayed for like over 20 years now. I have been the director of the program since 2008, and it's the absolute pleasure and joy of my life to be able to work with the program. I am also a proud member of the library board of trustees for the last year or so. Really love the library, and I'm glad to be here with you. So yeah, I think I've known some of you for a long time. For those of you who don't know me, I've lived here for a super long time. My parents live here at the Mayflower. They're both here. You may know them, Nancy and Jerry Guenther. And my husband Jordan works at Grinnell Farm to Table and also runs Middle Way Farm, so some of you might know him from that. I also have a 6-year-old son who is extremely busy and talks to everyone. His name is Oscar, so you may have met him around town as well. So that's my personal life here in Grinnell. Molly, do you want to come up and introduce yourself?
No? Hello? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Campe. I am Grinnell College class of 1996. And I don't say that as much as I used to, because I used to work in alumni relations. So, of course, then I was Molly Campe 96 at every event. But I'm still Molly Campe 1996, but now I am working with the prison program. So I graduated in 1996. As I said, there's going to be a quiz at the end. But 1996, I graduated. I left Grinnell and came back now, let's see. My daughter's 15, and we came back when she was 2. So it's been 13 years since I've been back. By the way, I thought I was only coming back for a couple of years, but surprise, surprise. And so I worked with alumni relations for, I think, 7 years. And now I've been here coming on 5. years. So it is also my absolute pleasure and delight to be working with this program. I'm looking forward to sharing more with you all. It's great to see your faces. I know many of you probably through my work with alumni relations. And as I mentioned, I have a 15-year-old daughter who's one of Sarah's swimmers right now. So state is coming up tomorrow for swimming, so it's a big week. And I also have an 18-year-old son, Kai. So that's my family here. Yeah. Again, when did I graduate? Good.
When did I graduate? I didn't tell you, so.
No, you did.
Oh, I did?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. 07.
You said you came in
yes,
2003.
Excellent. Gold star.
Yes,
okay.
that was a hard.
Yeah,
that was a trick.
That was a difficult one. Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. I'll slow. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Got it. Yeah, so I wanted to also just mention here about the bucket courses that for those of you who've gone to the bucket courses for years, some of you have, there's been just a ton of overlap between people who've taught bucket courses, professors from the college, who have also taught in the prison program. I think we have the best teachers on planet Earth teaching in the prison program, and they love to teach, and many of them have done bucket courses here. So it's been cool over the years to see all the overlap with bucket class teachers. Also, we're here in the Drake Community Library, and that always makes me think of George and Sue, of course. George Drake was one of the first professors to teach in the program. And I remember talking to him at a ride out to the prison one time, and I said, "Oh, the public library is named after you. How did that happen?" And he said, "Well, they told me that using our name would help with donations." And I said, "Okay, go ahead. You can use my name." And that was very much his attitude toward the program as well, where he was like, he taught for many years in the program and was one of our core faculty, but he also said, "I'll be the mascot. Like, the alumni know me. I'm the bait, and they can come and hear me talk, and then they'll get to hear the real people who are really, So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I love being in the library, thinking about George. And I also remember him saying at a drive out to the prison that public libraries are the most democratic institution that we have in this country, which I think is really true. And I think, the spirit of the public library is very much in line with the spirit of the prison program, education for all, continuing education for all. So anyway, now I will tell you a bit about the liberal arts in prison program, how we got here, what the program looks like, and so on, and then introduce the panel, and then we will have the aforementioned break where you can get more coffee, and then we'll have Q&A for the rest of the time. So the liberal arts in prison program started back in 2003. It was a student volunteer organization for its early history. I was one of the leaders of the student volunteer organization while I was on campus. And basically, our early history was characterized by kind of having our expectations challenged and expanded through our work with people in prison. We went originally to Newton Correctional Facility, and we're doing creative writing workshops, and learned very quickly that who we were interacting with as students from the college was another group of students, like very dedicated, eager, talented students whose interests were really not limited in the ways that we might assume that they were. So we began recruiting other students to do workshops from topics from all across the college. People were usually doing workshops that were kind of mini versions of the classes they're teaching on the campus. And so that was the early story of the program. Around the time I was graduating, I learned about college and prison programs around the country who had been offering credits and degrees in prisons nearby, and was really inspired by that effort. And through the effort of a lot of faculty and administration, students, and alumni, really kind of pushed for developing this credit-bearing program from the college. So in 2009, we began offering classes for credit at the local prison, Newton Correctional Facility, and the classes are the same classes that are taught on campus. They have the same curriculum, the same expectations, the same assignments and everything. Sometimes people teach, often people teach the same class on campus that they're teaching in the prison at the same time. And so they can kind of share back and forth like what the students are talking about in one class and the other class. The conversations are often different because the experiences of the incarcerated students often have, they're often older, they have rich experiences to bear and bring to the classroom. Since then, we have continued to grow. We've gotten grant funding, we've gotten very generous donations from alumni and community members around from the college and from the community, and those gifts have really powered the program to expand and grow and become the rich program it has become today. So we have now, you've met our two staff in the program, me and Molly, and we are busy every day making things happen on the back end so that really like students can learn and professors can teach. And so what the program looks like right now is I was looking at this slide while I was talking. But I should have framed it as a quiz. Like, when did the program start? 2003. When did we offer our first class for credit? 2009. Anyway, so I'll just move on. So right now the program looks like this. We have cohorts of about 15 students. Well, actually, it's now about 25 at each prison. And they go through an admissions process where they sit down for an essay based on a short piece of writing. They analyze the essay, and then they turn it back in, and we give it to professors who have taught in the program. They evaluate the essays, and then the top people get an interview, and then the top people from the interview get admitted into the program. So the basic idea behind it is that we know that there's a lot of folks in prison who are very talented students, and many of them aren't prepared in a way that would be recognized in a traditional admissions process. So we try to identify talented folks who can really thrive in these very difficult, rigorous classes that they enroll in, and who may have had, not gone to college for many years, never gone to college, dropped out of high school, or even earlier, and never had a chance to enroll in formal education that really engaged them. So that's what our admissions process is designed to do. Students usually take between 2 and 4 classes per semester. And they can earn up to 60 Grinnell College credits, which they can then transfer either within the institution. They can transfer to a community college for a 2-year degree, and after they're out, we've had people transfer credits for bachelor's degrees and other degrees. So they can kind of take these credits and use it as a springboard to go wherever they would like to do, wherever they would like to go. So here are some of our offerings in the last year or so. I would highlight that this semester we have our first seminar 300 level class at the women's prison, which we've expanded to. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And we had just last spring, we had our first independent study. So we had a student who was doing a 300 level independent study about the restoration of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Who had previously taken a 200-level architecture class with us, so he was able to do an entirely independent study about that. And I learned a lot about, I went to the presentation, I learned a lot about church architecture and terms which I had no idea about. As I mentioned, we've been operating at the Newton Correctional Facility for the entire time since 2003. So this is a medium security men's prison just outside of Newton. And this is our kind of flagship place where we've been for a really long time, really successful program there, have a really strong culture among the students there. And then 3 years ago, we were really excited to expand the program to the Iowa Correctional Institution for Women outside of Mitchellville. So this is the only women's prison in the state. And we got grant funding and donations from alumni to specifically to expand the program to the women's prison. And that program is going like gangbusters. It's, you know, the model basically works, and it works wherever you have students who are willing and dedicated to making it happen. So we just officially ended the pilot this last summer, and it was successful, so our program's continuing there. And we are planning to be there for the long haul, so we're really excited to be able to serve women as well as men. And as I mentioned, we're having our first seminar there this semester, so that's also an indication of the program's growth and the development of the students there that they've taken now for 3 years, a range of 100 and 200 level classes, and this semester are taking their first seminar. And the person teaching that seminar is going to come here at about 11 after he's done teaching on campus, so you can hear from him about that class. So here are some numbers. We've been operating the program for over 20 years now, so we've done a lot, enrolled a lot of different students. NCF, that acronym is Newton Correctional Facility, the men's prison, ICIW, Iowa Correctional Institution for Women. And the professors who've taught, that's a big number, almost 50 Grinnell College professors who've taught classes in our program. So we're really happy to have this be part of the culture of the college, and have had, very lucky to have incredibly talented people teaching. Again, I think the very best, not that I'm biased, but I think the very, very best teachers on earth. Yeah, including, I don't know, Elizabeth, if I should single you out, but Elizabeth Dobbs, who's here, and has taught, and she was one of the very first people who taught in the program, and taught. How many times did you teach, Elizabeth? Do you remember? Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, so for those who couldn't hear, Elizabeth taught 2 4-credit classes. Was that Literary Analysis and Humanities 101? Literary Analysis and Humanities 101, and also 5 times a 2-credit workshop in the summer called Dr. Syntax, which was a syntax workshop, which people went through and was really, really successful in helping prepare people to do these challenging classes for many years. What's that? Oh, we're going to have lots of time for questions at the end, so if you could just wait just a sec, don't lose it. But yeah, we'll have that time in just a moment. So some national context here. College and prison was very normal and routine before the mid-1990s when Congress made people in prison ineligible for Pell Grants. And so hundreds of college and prison programs closed their doors in the mid-90s when that law was passed. And in the interim, Grinnell College was one of the very few colleges anywhere in the country offering college programs for incarcerated people. These programs are, some of the most effective public programs out there, just very, very effective at reducing recidivism rates, helping keep folks out of prison, and I would say expanding expectations for everybody about what their lives can be, including for those of us who come from campus. So it was a real tragedy that these programs closed, We are very proud that we were operating in the time when there were almost no programs anywhere in the country. And now, good news is that in 2023, Pell Grant access has been restored for people in prison, which means that there have been programs cropping up, like I mentioned, especially community college programs offering college credits again. And so the part of the national effort around that was looking at programs that were small programs that were operating in the interim and seeing how effective they were. Really helped change the law on this and regain access. So some national context or even international context, the United States incarcerates almost more of its own population than almost anywhere on Earth. We have huge numbers of people in prison. It's really ballooned, skyrocketed since the 1970s, just started going down very, very slightly. But it's really a national shame, I would say, that we incarcerate so many people in this country. And what that means is that there's a loss of really the opportunity of really having people and their many talents benefit us in the community. So I always talk about, why we do this, why is the college doing this, and really a lot of it is just because of our liberal arts mission. We want to engage wonderful students, talented students wherever they are, and one of the places where they are is in prison, especially in this country where we incarcerate so many people. So I have a quote here which I think really exemplifies a lot of people's experience coming from campus. I can say that was definitely true for me as a college student. It continues to be true that engaging students in the prison really reaffirms my own commitment to liberal arts education and democratic access for education for students who have little access. This is just a fun picture. This is from one of our students at the Iowa Correctional Institution for Women who took a classical mythology class last semester, and she, as part of her final project, drew this picture of Medusa. I have a few photos here. One of them is of Jason Dara, who is in the front row there. That's been now quite a while. Jason, I suppose you maybe look a little bit different, but not much. That is true. But as I mentioned, we've had students who have gotten released and then finished their degrees at different institutions after their release. And so these are three of those students. The person on the left, his name is Peter Thullen. He got out and finished his associate degree, transferring his Grinnell credits, and then went on and finished a bachelor's degree in physics at Truman State University in Missouri, and is now an engineer at a process engineer, which you can ask him perhaps what that means, but he's using his physics degree. Jason Dara finishing his associate degree after release, and Jason Ross is the one on the very right, finishing his bachelor's degree at his graduation after release. So that's the intro. So I'll close this, or maybe I'll leave it open. I like these pictures. So now I'll introduce our panel, and we can, and I'll ask them a few questions, and then we'll take that break at 10:40. Rather than 11:40, and then we'll come back and have lots of time for Q&A with the panel. Okay, so do you want to just go along the line and introduce yourself? Just say your name and your participation in the program, what your connection to the program is, and then I'll ask some more questions.
Can you hear me? All right, top of the morning to you. So, my name's Jason. That was actually taken last week. They doctored it to make me look younger. Yeah. So my parents met at a juvenile delinquent facility in Toledo, Iowa. It was a co-ed facility. They were juveniles. They had a pretty rough life growing up. And they had me and my brother relatively young, so it was kind of a foreshadowing for how I would end up, and my brother as well. I was 12 years old when I started using intravenous drugs. And that's also around the time I began living a very violent life of crime. And I was 16 years old when horrible choices led me to prison, where I spent almost a quarter century of my life straight. It was 24 and some change. I tell them quarter century, it sounds better. So Emily touched briefly on the college programs in the late 80s and early 90s, and they were in prison. And when I went to prison, I immediately took accountability for my actions and knew I would have one chance to improve myself. And I saw that improvement through education. Although prior to that, I had no predication on education in my life. But I immediately, when I got real with myself, when I went to prison, I realized that was how I was going to change. So I got my GED, I got my high school diploma, and then I went to college to a Pell Grant. And I started rocking and rolling. People that live a criminal lifestyle, they see the world through a keyhole. It's very narrow. We don't see a lot of opportunities for ourselves. I myself saw myself dying by the time I was 18 years old. That's what I expected. And if I would have not went to prison, that's probably what would have happened. So, as I started learning more and doing more things that I never thought I would have imagined doing, my view of the world and myself in it became far more panoramic. You could almost say the opportunities and options and potentials were unlimited. And this was just so inspiring to me. And just as I was realizing that, tough on crime laws in 1995, I believe it was, put an end to it. No more Pell Grant for incarcerated individuals. But by that time, although I was still thirsty, I got enough drops to make it to where this is what I want to do. This is still going to be what I need. So for years, I would take part in writing competitions, stuff like that here and there. And once in a while, I'd get a class here, a class there, correspondence classes, and I was doing what I could. Until at some point in time, I went to a prison and I was introduced to a very, very young Grinnell college program, which at that time was the very beginning. And it absolutely changed my life. I'll talk about it more later, but it was the most impactful, transformative experience of my life. And I've been out of prison now for 12, 13 years. I have a home, a family, beautiful fiance, Tara, in the back there. These things are the world to me, and I wouldn't have any of them if it wasn't for Grinnell. Grinnell changed my life, Grinnell saved my life, and Grinnell gave me the life that I have now, which I appreciate beyond words. Now, something I want to say before I hand the mic off, and I'm sorry for talking so much, but this is kind of a uniquely magical experience for me today, talking to you guys here in this setting. I've done a lot of these, but I want to say we got to Grinnell House last night around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And I got to my room and I opened the end table, the nightstand, and there was a book in there. It was History of Grinnell College. And I'm flipping through it, and I get to this page, and there's a picture there from 1980. It was a presidential inauguration of George Drake. And it's hard for me to maintain my composure when I talk about him, because he's one of a very small group of people that were so impactful on my life. And I am profoundly honored to be able to call him my friend. Every single time I was with him and able to share a space with him, it was a profound joy for me. And I've done so many panels and spoke so many times, and for 10 years he was always there. He was always on my right side. And it's crazy when I hear you talk about the way he explained libraries. He explained libraries to me when I was sitting in prison. I never thought about it. I actually worked in a prison library at the time, and he told me it was the last purely democratic institution in the United States. And I never understood it, and he explained it to me about the equity and the opportunity and the freedom that it represents. And then, so now, to be here today, after seeing that inauguration picture last night of this profoundly outstanding, honorable, noble, humble man that has such a huge impact on my life, I want to say that I am very, very, very honored to share this space with you guys today, so thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, hi. I'm Felipe Tinoco. I have been teaching at the prison since the spring semester, and I actually have an interesting story that some of you may know. Mark Laver, he's a lecturer in music, and when I first moved to Grinnell, I met with him. I am a musician myself. I I earned my doctorate in ethnomusicology, and I seen that he was one of the ethnomusicologists in town. I met with him and I talked to him about potential opportunities for me to teach at Grinnell. And Mark told me that Grinnell has the largest population of ethnomusicologists per capita in any place in the United States, which is kind of funny because if you think of the Grinnell population, right, and the number of ethnomusicologists. Anyways, it sounded very funny when he told me. But then he immediately said, but by the way, we have this fantastic program, the Liberal Arts in Prison program. Would you be interested in it? And I immediately said yes. And then that's how I got involved with the program. He introduced me to Molly and Emily, and it's been a phenomenal experience to work with them. I think I will save some of my speech to the Q&A, but I just wanted to express my gratitude to being working with the program, working with you two, and just being a part of the panel to kind of talk to you all a little bit about what we teach, what it means for us to be a part of this program. So thank you.
Do you mind if I stand up? Y'all can't tell, but I'm a couple pounds overweight. So when I sit down and talk, I lose breath, and I got a lot to say. First, you probably don't remember me, but you was one of my teachers, 2013, 2014. When she said your name, I started tearing up because I don't think people understand what y'all mean to us. And I'm trying not to get emotional, but it's hard when you find the origins of a path that literally changes your life. And when she said your name, I was like, and I just got super excited, even though I still don't know what an adverbial predicate is. Oh my God, it all came rushing back. I remember the sentence tree, and so I'm gonna try not to get emotional. I'm sorry, I just had to shake her hand to see if she even remembers me. But my name is Eagle Feather, and I spent 18 and a half straight years in prison. I did most of that time. I went to prison when I was 18 and didn't get out till I was 37. Now, when she met me, I was 33, 34 years old, so I still had 3-4 more years to go. But I did most of that time in a maximum security penitentiary called Fort Madison. Now, Fort Madison is a huge, huge leap from Newton. Now, when I first got to Newton, I still had that mentality of being in a maximum security penitentiary. So I was used to being treated a certain way. I was used to being looked at it a certain way. They didn't understand that I am a human being. So when I got to Newton and I was able to meet people like Ms. Dobbs, who looked at me as a human being, who saw me not from my outer appearance, but saw into my heart, into my soul, it made me want to be more human instead of being treated like an animal. And with that being said, I really don't know what to say except for that I'm very emotional, especially when it comes to stuff like this, because like I said, this is the origins. Grinnell was the origins that set me on a path that completely changed my life. It taught me that it taught me everything from like the ancient Greeks, ancient history and stuff like that drawing that was on there. Like, it taught me the sad story of Medusa. I had no clue who Sarpedon or Diomedes or who would need to look at that. That is so beautiful. That was made by a person who society deemed as an animal, who deems as a criminal. But if you look at this, if you look into her eyes, you will see that prison, as you can see, is an untapped fountain of raw potential. I mean, I've met so many philosophers, artists, sculptors. I've met orators, strategists, and these people, they just need somebody to believe in them. They need an Elizabeth Dobbs. That's what I needed. I needed an Emily. I remember when I first had my interview with her, and she made me laugh and I made her laugh, and I felt like I was a human, and she saw in us the beauty. And I don't know, I'm gonna sit down before I start getting emotional, but thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Felipe, would you like to talk a bit more about the classes you've taught, what the students have been like, and the kind of things you're talking about in class?
Sure thing. So I started teaching in the spring semester at ICIW, and I taught a class titled Music, Culture, and Context. The course is essentially a study of popular music in the United States and in the world. We looked into particular musical styles that normally we wouldn't look at otherwise. Music styles essentially outside of the Western classical music. And we analyzed that music with the same rigor that we would analyze a fugue by Bach. We look at the intricacies of those music styles. And one of the beautiful things about this class is that all of us, we have a personal relationship with music. We listen to music, we enjoy it, we have our opinions, we don't like this, we like that. And when coming to the class, we had to examine our expectations, to examine our tastes and put that into in context. What does this music mean for the sub-Saharan African group? What does this music mean for Chinese immigrants performing in Russia? We had to understand everyone's personal relationship to music and examine our own in relation to that. It was an incredibly rich class that allowed everyone to express themselves, give them their opinions, and also understand that beyond our emotional relationship with music, we also have to understand every single human being's individual emotional relationship with music. In many ways, it was a humanities class, purely humanities class, more so than a musical analysis class. We discussed so many music styles. It was fascinating to hear some students say, "This doesn't sound like music to me. This sounds like trash." And having the moment to say, okay, what is good music? What does that sound like? How can we define some of these elements? And after we had several blueprints of what made the music good, we are able to understand, wait, that's specific to how I grew up, to how I was listening to music. We tapped into the most innate human engagement with music at every point of the discussion. And it was such a rich experience to be able to share my own experience too as a musician. I come from a jazz musical background, and jazz, especially today, is very dry and cutthroat. If you don't perform at a particular level, you get kicked out on the stage immediately. It's a very dry environment. So I also had to come in with my own predicaments and look at the music and understand, wait, maybe I'm talking about this music in a way that is not fair to the music and the musicians, because I come from this very cutthroat background that if music is not performed at this level, it's probably not good, right? It was a personal growth experience for me just as much as I think I'd like to believe it was for all the students. So that was the class that I taught at ICIW, and I'm teaching the same class now at NCF. And it's incredible to see students from both correctional facilities have so many talents. I've had one student just a few weeks ago show me one of his songs that he wrote for his son. And it was a beautiful, beautiful song with very intricate lyrics and interesting chords. And I told him, hey, by the way, why don't you try this particular chord in this music? And he had brought his guitar. I played on the guitar, and he was in tears. And it was just, we've always have continuously this very raw emotional experience where we share the most intimate relationships that we have with something so personal like music on a day-to-day basis, on a class-to-class basis. So that is what I've been teaching at ICIW and NCF.
Great, thank you. Yeah. I love the enthusiasm. I think now, and I also just, I feel like I sort of missed the moment to say, I mean, this is all very emotional for me as well. I mean, I feel like I'm always, for me and Molly, we always just have to like make things happen and make things run. But it's hearing these stories and getting to have these personal connections is like the absolute joy of, makes everything meaningful and worth it. So I think now we'll do the break, and we'll come back in like 5 minutes, so that we can have questions from you all for the panel. I wanted to mention out there, in addition to the most important thing, which is the coffee, there is there is some information about the program, and I also have a newsletter sign up that we'll pass around when you get back. Okay. All right, see you in 5.
I don't know why I feel like it's not. Is it loud enough? Okay, great. So now it is time for any of your questions. I can walk around. I can give you the mic for your question. We have about 40 minutes. If folks don't have questions, we certainly have questions of our own we can throw out, but I want to make sure to give you all plenty of time. So, who wants to start us out with a question? And it can be for any of us here. Anyone? Okay, let me go back.
I'll ask the one that I had earlier. It was answered in the presentation, but I was wondering whether they were online or in-person classes. And they did answer the question. I know they do limit online access at the prison, so that was one of my questions.
Yes, right. Our classes are in person. I think they do limit, there's a lot of issues, complications that come up with online classes. I think one thing that's really important to us also is we want to, as best we can, replicate what happens on campus and prison. And so because Grinnell College does not have any online classes, we really try to also provide the same format and also what we believe the same quality in prison. It's tricky, right? Because online does give more access. But right now, all our courses are in person. I think the only time that didn't happen is COVID, right? During COVID. But other than that, yeah. Yeah. Oh, you got it?
Okay, you can hear me. Also, just speaking on the idea of accessibility with internet and online access, one of the things that I think we try our best to replicate that we have on campus is having as many materials already downloaded into our laptops to have that available to present it in class. I am a very spontaneous instructor, very spontaneous speaker, and often when I'm teaching classes on campus, I'll think of this music example to show about something that came up in the discussion, but you can't do that at the prison. So I try to plan my class accordingly and anticipate all kinds of questions, all kinds of possible directions, and it never works, right? Because conversations just happen. But it's definitely something that I personally miss on the classroom, and but then and also the communication too, right? If a student has a question on campus, they can just email us, say, hey, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. I wonder if you could meet about this. Whereas in the prison, the only moment that you get is during the class, right? So it's a bit tricky for the instructor also to plan around it, but definitely manageable, and we try our best to replicate as much as we can of the life that we have on campus at the prison classroom.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just to say again, we have no internet. The students have no internet in the prison, like Felipe was saying. No access to email. So, like you mentioned, office hours. We don't have office hours, don't have email. Something that was really exciting, I think it was a year ago, things changed, and now professors are able to bring in a computer, and that was big news for us. I mean, when we got to bring in a computer, which means, like Felipe said, you can download a PowerPoint presentation, other short videos. And I mention this just because I think it's an interesting aspect of my position and Emily's is, you know, we spend time, for example, videos are shown. We need to have them be approved before they're shown in the prison. We have to have, you know, of course, all the books, the materials approved beforehand. There's a lot of behind the scenes work in a way that, I mean, I think I took it for granted before, just how many steps it takes. And that really means for our professors, you know, we are so lucky to have such fabulous professors. And I would say the number one thing that works, that a professor needs in order to be, you know, to work with us is flexibility. Because you can imagine that things are flying every day, something might change, and you know, you don't know. You might get to prison and things are closed and you have to turn around. That doesn't happen very often, but just my point is just constantly we are asking our professors to really, and our students, to really have to be flexible in a way that can be tricky, but I'm always just so proud of our students and our professors for just, you know, we just roll with it as best as we can.
Yeah, so you guys can hear me, right? It's hard. This is that mic that you can't really tell. So I was incarcerated a lot of years before and after Al Gore created the internet. The Al Gore thing's a joke, by the way. I was hoping you guys would get that. But so from my perspective, I was of two minds about the internet because there was years and years before I was actually exposed to it and be able to use it myself. And I was thinking, part of me was like, so the majority of society is going to have access to this cognitive prosthetics that's going to give them instant access to any information they want. Well, we won't need any more schools, right? Everybody's going to be a genius. Of course, there's another side to that where I was thinking this is really going to expose the true ignorance of society and what's underneath. And there, you kind of see both, right? You kind of see both, but it sometimes seems disproportionately leaning towards people choosing bad things or things that aren't necessarily self-developmental. And you see a lot of people taking advantage of people that do try to better themselves with the internet or try to monetize it and do all these different things. It's just way different. There was no way to really foresee. But we definitely still need institutions, and we need live taught institutions. During my educational journey, I've had a lot of experiences with a lot of different colleges and educational programs that were live and otherwise. And I've had other opportunities where it was live education, but it still wasn't to the level of Grinnell. Now, why is that? I've really looked into this and really thought about why Grinnell is so uniquely impactful. And one is the education is very high level. So, and it is challenging for people who don't have a history of a trajectory going through the educational process. Very challenging. I remember, so I talked about mentors, and George Drake, and Elizabeth Dobbs is another one. She was right there with George Drake, and so impactful to me. When I walked into this room, you're the first person I saw, and I almost lost it. I mean, wow. I mean, you can't even put into words how surreal it is, right, and how special this situation is. I love Elizabeth Dobbs. But I remember Elizabeth, before we took our first syntactic analysis, our literary analysis class, and you said, I will never make you write more than a page. I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. Oh, man. That page had to be, I would say perfect, but it had to be beyond perfect, right? She demanded perfection. And it was so difficult, but after going through the process of that difficulty, you would have it no other way. I always tell people, we find our shapes in resistance to gravity. And I got that saying from that class. Because we face adversity, we have one or two ways to go about it. If we rise up and let that adversity shape us in a positive way, you will find who you are and who you want to be. If you let it defeat you, that's your choice. And then again, in that way, you'll find who you want to be, but it's probably not who you want to be, right? So I say that a lot. We find our shapes in resistance to gravity, and I got that from that class. That taught me very early on, and that is kind of a mantra I've lived by ever since. But that side, you have the high-level education. Now the other side is the compassion. It's hard to quantify the blast radius of compassion. But I'm going to tell you, when people get out of prison, formerly incarcerated individuals, they're your siblings, they're your children, they're your parents, they're your neighbors, they're the people that you work with, they're part of your community. And what they learn in prison and the trajectory that they are set on, that they carry on beyond the gates, when they're taught, the things they're taught, they transcend the confines of their environment, not only in prison, but outside of prison. They want to affect everybody in a positive way. Now, people that don't go through a program like this, your traditional prisoner, they're not taught these things. They're not taught compassion. They're not given their dignity through compassion. When we were given our education in a format where we no way, shape, or form deserved it. It was given to us through compassion. And that resonates with us to our soul. And that changes us completely. It's in the fiber of who we are. And everybody I met outside the walls that has been through this program, they want to do good. They want to impact other people in a positive way. It's indelible, and that's what makes this program unique.
Hola, ¿cómo está? Okay, there you go. Again, I got to stand up because I want to live, I want to breathe. I just want to piggyback off of the question and his answer. I believe that online courses, especially when dealing with the prison environment, doesn't help. The reason I say that is because most people that are in prison, they're broken. They're hurt. Now, me, myself, when I went to prison, I was very violent. I started my life of criminal activities when I was 12 years old, went through the system, foster home, group homes, juvenile detention centers, juvenile penitentiaries, mental hospitals, countless of those, and eventually found myself in a maximum security penitentiary. So I was one of those broken people. Now, when you're in those environments, prison is a natural breeding ground for violence because most of the people there are broken. Most of the people there are violent. So it's, like I said, it's a natural breeding ground for misery, for hate, for darkness, for gloom. And then you have a program that comes in with a little bit of light. Now, the reason I believe that in-person classes are so important is because it is hard to hide who you are face to face. Now, like I said, most of the people in prison are broken, but they just need a little bit of compassion, a little bit of love. And so when you meet these professors, when you meet these people who don't look at you as a prison number, who doesn't look at you as a convict or an animal, they look at you with love, with compassion. It does something to people who's never experienced that. It does that to people who has believed because society has told them you're an animal. It does something to your soul. And I can't even begin to express what it means to people who are lost, who are broken. And people are going to learn every day. Every day people learn. And when you're in prison, you're dealing with people who knows how to make pipe bombs. They know how to launder money. They know how to write bad checks. Every day people learn. Yet you have a group that comes in there and show us that compassion and show us what it means to start learning good things. And that's why it breaks my heart that more programs aren't available, because according to the statistics, only a few chosen, a few lucky people can get into this program, but the masses are still swarming around in that misery, and that breaks my heart. And that's why I love the fact that there's some donors here that is helping people like me. Now, earlier I was talking about how, like, Ms. Dobbs and these other professors, they're the origins of your story of starting on a new path. Now, this, the recidivism rate for prison is ridiculous. But my path, because of Grinnell, I now love doing public speaking. that was the first time I stood up in front of an audience. Although they was all convicts, and they was all looking at me suspiciously, like, it gave me the confidence to get up and speak in front of people, to be able to open my chest and become vulnerable to the crowd. They also taught me writing, and now I write books. My next book should be on shelves here in the next couple of weeks. But without programs like Grinnell that look at us as human beings, look at us with that compassion, I don't know where I would be probably sitting in prison again, because I didn't have that, the origin stories to a new path.
Thank you. Real quick before we'll get to another question, but Dustin, do you want to introduce yourself? Dustin joined us. I think we mentioned that this is Professor Dustin Dixon, who was just teaching a class on campus. So thank you for coming. But just a quick introduction of yourself.
Yeah, my name is Dustin Dixon. I'm a professor in the Department of Classics at Grinnell. I was just teaching Greek, so rushing from Greek, teaching participles to my students on campus. And so I feel terrible that I'm interrupting you all, giving your eloquent speeches up here, and I hate following you all, as always. But I've taught at the prison program for several years. I started teaching at the women's prison in Mitchellville in the fall of 2022. From the first day, I knew that I had to continue doing this work. Because you walk into the classroom and you ask the students, why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you in my class? I was teaching Humanities 101, which is a survey of Greek literature in translation. It's a course that I teach on campus, and it's one with a storied history at the college. It used to be the only required course at the college. And the reason why it was a required course at the college is because it gave the students a set of common texts that they could talk about and refer to. So everyone on campus had read Homer, everyone on campus had read Thucydides, everyone on campus had read some Greek tragedy. Now, it's not required on campus anymore, but it still serves the same purpose, that students who take that course have a set of common texts that they can talk to and talk about with one another. And so when I was going into ICIW, going into Mitchellville on the first day, I asked the students why they were there, and without me giving the spiel. Yeah, is that better? I can hear that much better, yeah. I can start over and give that long. So, walk into the class the first day, and the students, they wanted this experience, that they felt that they had been excluded and not invited into reading these texts, that no one had ever invited them to read Homer or to read Thucydides or to read Greek tragedy. And that's what they really wanted, that they wanted to read these texts that they thought were foundational to world literature. And so they were eager to dive in. So as soon as the students started saying that on the first day, I just knew that I was in for a great experience with them, and I learned so much from them, and that I had to continue doing this work. So I started in fall 2022, and I've taught a number of classes at the ICIW. I've taught Humanities 101. I've taught a class, tutorial class called Persona. I've taught classical mythology, and currently I'm teaching a course called The Emotions of the Greeks, in which we explore what the ancient Greeks thought about emotions and how they thought that they were expressed. So that's kind of a brief introduction to me, maybe not so brief, but thank you for having me late.
Thank you. Thanks, Dustin. Great. Question? Anyone else? Okay.
I'm just curious. I'm curious, as far as the essays are concerned. I'm wondering what happens if someone has unlimited abilities and talents, but doesn't express themselves very well in writing. How do you get around that? I guess I'm talking to the people who read the.
Yeah, this is probably a good question for Emily, because of like I said, a lot of people, well, almost everybody that gets into this program, they did not come from a background that facilitated a trajectory through education. these people never thought they were going to be in high school, college, may never have ever been to school, period. And so what are their writing levels like, their skill levels like as far as writing goes? They could be brilliant thinkers, but not have the background that would facilitate that type of skill. So Emily can probably speak to what they do to facilitate that and get people up to that level.
I was trying to sit in the audience, but seems I've been nominated. So, which I'm happy to talk about this. I love talking about it. So I mean, I think whenever I'm talking to professors about this program, when I'm doing recruiting, I say, basically, your experience in the prison program classroom, the discussions will be much livelier and richer in some ways than what you may experience on campus. Again, for two reasons. One is that people are older, have had lots of different life experiences that they can bring to bear, which you simply don't have when you're 18 to 22 years old. Also, that people in the prison program classroom are less afraid of looking stupid, broadly speaking, than students on campus. And I feel like I can say these things because I'm an alum. So I was one of these people who was afraid of looking stupid in the Grinnell College classroom. But incarcerated students, like often, I think they're just so eager to participate and also really don't want to let anything get by them. So I've heard from lots of professors that they've helped faculty identify holes in their teaching and their explanations, because they will stop and say, hold on, I don't know what you just said. Like, walk it back and explain it to me again. Anyway, all of that was not about writing, but that is part of what I say. And then I say the thing that they usually will need some more support with is writing skills. And I think a lot of that is because writing is such a demanding form of thinking. Like, you have to know exactly what you're really saying when you write, and it's extremely demanding. I continue to find it very difficult. And so what we have found consistently is that people, like people anywhere, grow with support. So we put people right away in these very demanding classes where they have to write just as much as on campus. We advertise the program within the prison as Grinnell is a writing college. Like, you will learn how to write. Like, this is the one thing we will tell you. We will teach you how to do. And this is an amazing skill that a lot of folks don't have anymore. So we provide a lot of support. We bring in tutors from the Writing Center and students on campus who are embedded in the class. Like, so for example, in Dustin's seminar, there's a student who's taken the class on campus who's a senior who comes in and meets with students weekly. We also have Writing Center people coming to the prison and meeting with people one-on-one on drafts of every major paper that they do in the program. So through the repetition of the writing instruction and all of the tutoring that we provide in writing, we see people grow very quickly in their writing skills. So it is an area that we devote extra attention to. And like people anywhere, people grow with the support that they need. And we find that they are able to grow very ably with the support. Was that the answer you were looking for, Jason? And I feel like
ask your father. Ask your father.
Oh, is that why you did that? That was my dad who asked that question. So I think Jason was trying to get me to answer a question in front of my dad. So mission accomplished. So but I feel like people who have experienced this and have taught and seen the writing progression could answer this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it close enough this time? There we go. Okay. I would say that teaching in this context has made me a much better listener, because I think our students have a different vocabulary, they have a different training from our students on campus, and so they just communicate in a different way. But that doesn't mean that their ideas are any less sophisticated. So I found that often when I'm in the classroom, I have to, I'll sit there, I'll have a discussion, and the students will say something, and often I find it actually, or not often, but sometimes I find the comments to be a little bit banal, not all that sophisticated. They don't jump in there at kind of the high level that I might expect the students on campus to jump in. But one thing that I've learned is I have to sit back and wait, because the more sophisticated sentence that's just as nuanced and complicated is coming next. So I found that actually I have to be a better listener than I am discussion leader on campus, because the students, they do have good instincts. It just takes them a moment to kind of build up to it. And that is also true when I read their writing, that their writing sometimes has grammatical errors, just as the writing that I get on campus has grammatical errors. Sometimes it's not structurally perfect, but what I'm looking for is the idea, right? What is the idea that they're trying to communicate? So just this morning, I was finishing up a batch of papers for my seminar on the emotions. And in this class, the same class that I taught on campus last year, students have to begin by reading Aristotle's Rhetoric. They read Darwin. His theory of emotions and how emotions evolved from human beings, or from animals rather. We read new work in evolutionary biology, we read new work in neuroscience, and we read the latest research in the humanities on emotions and how emotions are expressed among groups of people. So it's really challenging stuff. And then for the first paper, the students have to do a case study of anger in one tragedy. And it's up to them to pick the appropriate theoretical framework from all of the readings that we've just done that is going to inform their analysis of this Greek tragedy. And so, and they all did this successfully, making appropriate selections, developing a methodology for their own reading, and then employing it as they write their paper. So again, it's not paying attention to the mistakes in the grammar, maybe the word choice is a little bit not what I would select, but instead looking for the ideas and the sophistication of the methodology. That's what we really work with on the students, or that's what I work mostly with the students on. And then I know that the tutors, the student who helps me in the class, he comes with me every week and then has tutoring every week. He works with them often on their grammar and their syntax. So really it's a team effort to try to hit the high level ideas that are there and to develop those, but also to help fine tune their grammar and syntax.
I don't have much more to say. I think that was beautifully put, Dustin. I think the challenges that we face, they're very unique, because I also come from a traditional student background, right? But the field that I am in, the field of ethnomusicology, was kind of a field that was developed in spite of the traditional systems and models of studying music. So in many ways, I've been very eager to read writing that defied the traditional forms. There was one student that I graded just recently who wrote in this kind of very interesting argumentative structure. He gave an argument, very well developed, then a counter argument just as equally as developed. And I'm thinking, wait, where this is going? You're supposed to argue for your initial argument, right? But then at the end, he found common ground between the two, and that was his actual argument. So there are different rhetoric strategies that students will often take because they're not necessarily constrained by particular forms, and being open to reading those and being a listener has actually opened up my understanding of writing and what writing can accomplish. So yeah, that I'm very grateful to just be immersed in these words that I would never come across otherwise.
Hello. Okay. I just had to make sure. I love that question simply because it made me think of what my first paper looked like compared to my last. The reason I say that is because most people who's in that environment, they come from an environment that education wasn't really a top priority. So most people like myself, I didn't have any education when I first went to prison. I had to get my GED while I was in prison, and it's like that for a lot of people. So I'm pretty sure my first essay was just one sentence, like no explanations, no punctuations, nothing, and I'm pretty sure most of it was gibberish. However, the reason I love that it's in person is because you have people that come there and will teach you how to write. And as a convict, you have to set your ego aside, because me, I was in my mid-30s, so I had these young kids coming in here and saying, well, this is a noun, this is, I'm like, no clue what it was. But the reason I love that question is because there is a starting point. And I wish I had my first paper to see how within a year I was able to grasp concepts, complicated concepts, how I was able to learn about syntax and structures and even what an essay was, because when you're out there running the streets, you don't care about writing, you don't care about essays. So just to see the personal growth from your first one to your last one, I wish I still had that, but that was a good question.
So it looks like we have about 10 minutes, so that gives us time for more questions. So what else? Anyone? Oh, don't be shy. Okay.
I was raised in a home where we had a lot of education going on. And my mom was going to college, and my dad, I mean, they brought people in. But there were things that I never learned until they started bringing in foster children. And I understand what you went through and what all of you, well, both of you, have gone through, because there's so little. I had a sister that for a short time, and her whole life was torn up because her parents didn't want her. And it's a change when you have brothers and sisters. And my one brother is still with us. My baby sister is still with us. But we did lose a few in the way, and I understand what happens.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm sorry if I missed it, Emily, as you were explaining this, but can you talk a little bit about how the courses are selected for this program? And then I'm also just a little bit curious then on the flip side, like how much then, if you could just remind me again, like how many courses are offered, how is that selected then from the student side? I'm just curious about from both sides of that, how that works.
Yeah. Emily does most of the course selection, so there you go.
Sure. So we pick classes in the program with several different factors in mind. When I sit down with a professor who's interested in teaching, we talk about the classes they teach on campus, and we usually identify one from the slate of classes that they teach on campus that would make sense in the prison. And that's because of student interest, also prerequisites, technology, logistics, all of that kind of thing. We're also always listening to students in the prison, what they are interested in. They had recently at the women's prison, they delivered to us, we brought in copies of the college catalog so that they could see, just how the college presents itself, what kinds of the offerings that are on campus. And they went through at the women's prison the catalog and made a note card for us with classes selected that they would like to see. And some of them you maybe would expect, psychology, sociology, things like that. Also, they had selected the tutors and the stewards. Yeah, that one was one of the most popular ones. So I explained to them, well, there's literally one person who teaches that class on campus, and I'll talk to them, but it's not, a sure thing. So there's a range of factors, also transferability. Some of the students are working on associate degrees while they're in our classes and transferring their credits, so there's also that question. It's a range of different things, but I think one of the most salient things about all of that is that we've never had a class bomb. Like, we have offered some pretty obscure topics, and people have loved every one of them. I'm trying to think some of them. it feels offensive to call a subject obscure, but I don't know, the worlds of Tibetan Buddhism, for example, like things that they get pretty specific, and there's just there's no end to the curiosity and interest that we've found in response to any of these topics. So yeah, I think it could be interesting to hear from you all about classes that you took and what you enjoyed, maybe as a way to start wrapping up.
I didn't mention this, but as the program was starting to get bigger, basically we created a job for me. It was the inmate facilitator for the program. And the longer I was inmate facilitator, the more impact I was able to have on what kind of classes we had, because the majority of the classes weren't accredited. We had to do a lot of classes that weren't accredited to build the credibility to have credits. And we also had a lot of latitude as far as what we were going to have for classes and stuff like that. So the longer I was the inmate facilitator, the more the classes kind of sometimes were geared towards my personal interests. So we would have like comic book classes, sequential art classes, I guess is a more academic way of explaining it, right? But so we was having stuff like that, and you're studying Kierkegaard and all these other things, and then here we're going to comic book class. But it was really awesome, and I remember one time I picked up the newspaper, and I saw on the cover of the newspaper, it was talking about a leading expert of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's talking about this guy, and I was like, wow, he's a Grinnell professor. I've never heard of this guy, and I never met him. So I brought it up to Emily. And Emily's like, well, he's always busy. He's off campus doing these things. He's literally over here in these caves a lot, and he's always busy. He won't do this, And he actually was, when I got to talking to him, he was over there a lot. And so we didn't think anything of it. And then I remember Emily coming up to me and being like, yeah, this guy's going to come. The guy, he's going to come. I can't remember if you sent him an email or saw him on campus or whatever. And he came and did a lecture, and he loved it. And the guy was amazing, right? So sometimes that's how it comes along. But when I think about individual classes that made a huge impact, of course, I talked about syntactic or literary analysis and Dr. Syntax. That was very impactful, let me tell you. I've never had anything that was so paradoxically traumatizing and rewarding at the same time. And I hear a lot of people describe it that way. But also, one of the first credited classes was taught by George Drake. And those of you that know George Drake, he was the most humble guy you will ever meet. And I remember he was teaching European history, and he split the class up into 3 sections. And you had Nazi Germany, right? And then I think you had France, and then you had like the United States and Britain. And you had to argue or cordially state why you were right in the war. And I remember I was one of the Nazi Germany group, and we had to argue why we were right in World War II. And this got really heated. And I remember during this massive debate that got very emotional, I remember I saw George sitting on this table, and he's watching and his legs swinging, and he's smiling. And I've never seen such a smile in my life over such a heated, because he just loved that passion. He saw the passion that these guys have. And I have countless memories about countless classes, but that's definitely one of them that really, really is indelible and sticks with me, and it'll stick with me till the end of my days. Very positive, and also, I guess it's, I don't know, it was just very, how do you defend Nazi Germany in World War II, right? I mean, it was just very odd, but very rewarding and positive, very positive. And it was a very accurate representation of George Drake. He loved to see people passionate about education. So I guess that's why I'll always remember it. It has such a big impact on me.
Hello? Okay. I took a couple of classes. One of them, of course, was Dr. Syntax, and like Jason said, it was traumatizing. I remember going to sleep, fighting off nouns and adverbs, and they're just attacking me from all sides. But I did learn a lot. Another one we had was Introduction to Statistics. and I could have forgot about that instantly. I didn't understand it, but they took the time. They showed me how important it is in life. And when he brought up Thucydides, I remember that. I remember reading Homer. I remember reading all these ancient literature that was just so beautiful. And at that time, I realized as I was reading it that I wasn't that smart because I didn't understand it, but yet the group discussions helped me understand what I was reading. And as I was talking to this professor, I also took a music class, and it ruined me. It ruined me. Here's why I say that. It's because prior to this class, I loved music. I loved hip-hop, R&B, gangster rap. I loved all of it. And when I first was listening to Bach and Beethoven, I'm like, man, this is garbage. That was at the beginning. But then at the end, I was listening to modern day music. I was like, man, this is garbage. Because Beethoven and Bach, they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It flows, and when you close your mind and you listen to these music, you're trying to pinpoint what instruments is doing this, and when it comes in, and it's just full of emotion and passion. And I started loving classical music, and then when I listened to modern day hip hop, I'm like, man, this is garbage. It's just like I told him, you listen to 6 seconds, you pretty much heard the whole song because it's just repetitive. So that's why I say music class, it kind of ruined me, because I'm the only one driving through the, the ghetto, listening to Bach. People looking at me weird, but the classes I took, they all of them, every single one of them, whether it was writing, whether it was intro to statistics, whether it was humanities, every single one of them impacted me, and it opened my eyes to a whole new reality that I knew absolutely nothing about.
So it is 11:32. So we are finished here for the day. I want to thank all of you for coming, and want to thank all of you also for being a part of this. I woke up this morning and I thought, oh, I love days like this. I love when we can come and share what we're doing. If you've seen our office, it's over on East Street, and it just says the prison program. And that's where Emily and I are. And anytime you're walking by and want to come in and chat more, we're there. But I often think that as we're in we like to call it the prison cottage, that when we're in there, often I wish I was more letting folks know in this community about our students and about our professors, and just really how proud I am of the program. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. It has been an absolute joy to hear your stories, and just really, really honored that everyone's here. Thank you for, your time and thoughts, and thanks for the reminder of George Drake, too. I'm glad we're here today. Such a great person, and did amazing work in this world. So a reminder, honestly, to me, just, be more like George and do more things like George. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to switch gears quickly. Next week, it's not going to be nearly as amazing as today. Next week, we have City of Grinnell updates. So next week we have, yes. Next week, we get to learn about water treatment plants. We get to learn about Parks and Rec. Not nearly, as great as the work you're doing, but that's okay. Good things that we need to know about what's happening in the community of Grinnell. You are all welcome to come back here. Next week, we'll be back to the 10 to 11 time frame, and then that will be our last time for this semester. We're not going to have programming in December or January, maybe the end of January, but we'll get information out there. Like I've told you in the past, if you have ideas for bucket course programs, please let me know. I want to hear your feedback. I want to know what you are interested in and learning more about. This was one that a lot of people asked us to learn more about, so I'm so thrilled you guys are here, and we learned so much more about the prison program today. So with that, I look forward to seeing you next week. Please have a great rest of your day, and thank you all for being here.